Alright, so today we have a larger than normal box from CGC here to open, and that is because this contains graded magazines. Now, graded magazines, in my humble opinion, are really underrepresented in the market, oftentimes undervalued, and most definitely underappreciated by the majority of collectors. And there's, some things that people are into, like Turtles #1, but people don't really consider that a magazine, even though it's in a magazine-sized holder. That is definitely a magazine-sized comic book. There's a lot of really interesting first appearances, a lot of beautiful cover art that just goes unnoticed on magazines. And what we have a lot of, I think, in this box is our UK weeklies, and they are Marvel reprints that generally came out a little bit after the US versions, sometimes featured the same, sometimes featured redrawn versions of the cover art, and sometimes had wholly unique cover art. And there's also a lot of characters that kind of got mixed up in these stories that never really were reprinted in the same comics together anywhere else. So these are some pretty interesting books. And they are super duper thin. They're like a newsprint. It's a matte cover. They're not even glossy covers. They're really thin, so they're hard to find in high grade. It's like trying to find a high grade insert from a newspaper or something. That is actually Avengers #1 UK edition. Also got Doctor Strange hanging out in there. Now this one got a qualified grade, and that is because special issues of some of these UK weeklies would come with gifts. And this one came with some little transfers, which was a pretty common inclusion in these, and they're very, very rarely still included. And sometimes they came with stickers, and sometimes they came with actual like a button glued to the cover, which is pretty crazy. And you'll never find a high grade one of those unless it was like undistributed, and even then it's not gonna have your buttons, so you're still gonna get a qualified grade. Here's some stuff I like. Eerie Publications, some of the best horror art of the 60s and 70s. It's 1979, so it's pretty late for an Eerie publication. And Eerie Publications is not to be confused with Eerie Magazine, which is pretty cool, but not quite as cool as this stuff. So as time went on, they added other characters to the Avengers title in the UK. In this case, Master of Kung Fu was in a run with them. And there's, all kinds of hidden keys in this stuff, and sometimes the first appearance of different characters were spread through multiple issues of this because the stories were shorter in these since they're weekly as opposed to monthly. They really kind of stuck a lot of stuff in there. More beautiful horror. This is my going home with me pile over here. Enter Dr. Doom. No idea what he's gonna do, but I'm sure it's something bad. It seems like Scarlet Witch could make some kind of magic helmet instead of needing that little bubble helmet, but whatever. There's a lot of British weeklies. That's a pretty one right there. Even though that's an 8.5, that's still a pretty high grade for one of those weeklies. Even when you get into the mid-80s ones, they're still difficult to find, like anything above a 9.0. And there's some that came out that really went beyond what we got in the US. Like Transformers, for example, had many, many issues, and a lot of crazy stuff happened, even crazier than all those shuriken flying around. There's some good, allegedly true crime. Beautiful art, and so this is Skywall. They also publish some weird stuff, not quite as crazy as the Eerie stuff, but they still did some pretty neat stuff. And more Avengers. Another Skywall piece. Creepy, a little more pedestrian, but so this is a French edition of Creepy Magazine, and it's got a Frank Frazetta cover. I don't actually believe they used this cover art on a US edition of this magazine. A lot of times with the European stuff, you would get totally different covers on these horror magazines, and especially for Zeta. There's a lot of like weird Zeta art on some of that stuff that's always really nice to get our hands on. And I guess we're finishing off this box with this lovely Deadly Hands Kung Fu. A lot of like good stuff. Actually, some of them actually have Bruce Lee in it, which you can never go wrong with Bruce Lee. And hopefully we will be getting some more magazines back soon to show off, and some of them will even sell.